My question is about the decision to include country music artists as part of the 1986 Great American Bash Tour. Why? Did fans enjoy the music? Was there any thought given to possibly having rock acts in the more northern cities like Philly and DC?
No.
Any interaction between the wrestlers and the musicians?
Well, yeah, okay. Well, first of all, the reason why. Why? The legitimate reason was that, especially back in those days, and especially down south, you always advertised the wrestling shows on the country music stations. It was the same audience. It was the NASCAR audience. It was the wrestling audience. It was the country music audience. That was an accepted piece of conventional wisdom because in most cases it was correct. Now, that was correct up until the end of the 70s when guys got a little younger in the business and guys started playing entrance music and everything. And then that's when, especially with Ricky and Robert, Rock and Roll Express, I was able to make inroads in the rock stations in Mid-South and in the Carolinas because younger and Dallas, Doyle King on, Q102, I'd be there. They were heavily focused on wrestling because it was attracting a younger audience. But the people that were running things were still, doing what they'd done 5 and 10 years before as far as advertising with the country music. So it was easy to sell Jimmy Crockett on we got to spend money on these country acts because he would say, okay. And the idea was it was to be a big outdoor show, the Great American Bash. It was to be wrestling and music. And in some places they forget we had fucking skydivers. And the first goddamn bash in Charlotte, Flair came in a helicopter. So that was the theme. There had to be more than wrestling, and it was a side attraction. And there was parking lot parties with the fucking hot dogs and the da-da-da. But that's the nominal reason. Also, the reason is because, and I will say this, while I never knocked Dusty's booking, Dusty Rhodes was a massive country music star or a massive country music fan, and Dusty Rhodes wanted these country music stars working for him. He wanted to be able to say, I brought George Scott to Cincinnati. Or George Jones.
Yeah.
He didn't want to say brought George Scott. Anyway. I brought George. Yeah, shut up. I brought Waylon Jennings to Atlanta or wherever the fuck they were. Yeah. And the only one, as far as interaction with the boys, the only run that really worked was David Allan Coe. Because if you go back for years in the 70s, Dusty and the Briscoes, everybody in Florida, they loved David Allan Coe. And David Allan Coe was a hell of a wrestling fan himself. And he had a couple of hits. And if you were a real deep country music fan, you knew David Allan Coe back then. But he would let the guys come up, they would come up and sing part of his hit. The rock and roll would be on stage with him. Ricky would try to sing, or Dusty'd try to sing, or fucking whoever else would try to sing. And it was fun for the fans, that part of it. But most of the time, except like in Philadelphia, the acts didn't really get booed off the stage or anything. They had to pull the plug on whoever it was in Jacksonville because the rain was coming. And we had to get him off the stage so that we get the main event on third and wouldn't have to give any money back. But at the same time, they would have drawn the same houses without the music acts. I can see how Jimmy Crockett was sold on it. I can see why Dusty did it because he was becoming a major entertainment booker, baby. And we got the wrestling stars and we got the country music stars and everybody's a star, baby. You have to be a star to be in my show. So but a lot of the guys were going like, fuck. They could have taken whatever they paid them and divvied up amongst us 30 guys on the card, and we'd each come up with another several $100s. So whatever. But that's pretty much the gist of the whole thing.
In my opinion, other than maybe the movie Body Slam and some All Japan women's stuff, I've never liked the mix of a concert with a wrestling show.
Well, actually, you can do it, but here's the thing. It needs to be something related to the boys. And, the Clintons down in Knoxville, they're the ones that did our Smoky Mountain Wrestling theme song that we did for the last year and a half we were on television. And they liked wrestling. And we had parking lot parties at radio stations where you'd have a ring set up and you'd have 3 or 4 matches in the parking lot. And the band would be playing and the sponsors be giving out shit and we'd be promoting the upcoming big event or whatever. Shit like that. Or honestly, in Smoky Mountain a couple of times, I don't know if we did it in Fan Week. We had to do it in Fan Week one year or whatever, but we would have the Armstrong Family Rhythm and Blues musical review where the Clintons would come and be the band, but Brian Armstrong could really fucking sing. And the other Armstrongs could get by with it, and Bullet might come out on stage and do the fucking dance. And Tracy Smothers one time in Morristown tried to sing Uneasy Rider by Charlie Daniels all the way through after he'd already had 10 concussions, and that was fucking great. And the people loved that shit because it wasn't we didn't come to a wrestling show and we're having to watch a concert with people that have nothing to do with wrestling. It was we came to a wrestling show, and before or at intermission of the wrestling show or beforehand or whatever, we get to actually see some of the wrestlers come out and sing and have a good time. So that was cool. It just depends on how you do things.
All right. Well, this next question here, Jim, is from Stephen Rao.